and happy holiday season. Yes, this is the holiday edition of DFO Rundown Insider Edition. That's David Pagnotta. I'm Irfaan Gaffar here in Vancouver. We are a presentation of Bet365. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. David, we are now approaching the NHL holiday break as we do this show, but just before the roster freeze, we had a little bit of a flurry of action, I would say. I want to start with the LA Kings because it seems like that Phillip Danault trade came out of nowhere. How did we get there?
Yeah, it kind of did. Obviously, there was all this talk about Danault being out there, and I think the timing, depending who you talk to, some people believed it was going to happen relatively quick. Others thought it was going to be kind of dragged out a little bit. I think there's a little bit of semantics surrounding the official trade request. There wasn't an official trade request, but I think there was an understanding that a move would be best for everybody. So, there's verbiage, there's context, there's all that fun stuff. Bottom line, LA ended up moving into the Montreal Canadiens. They get a second round pick out of this. They were trying to get a player, and there were other teams involved. It wasn't really until, I believe, so the trade happened on Friday. I believe it was around Wednesday when things really escalated with the Canadiens. And by the way, Danault was dealing with the flu. Maybe it prolonged a little bit longer. He really did. When he missed his first game, it was flu related. Mm-hmm. But, he might have milked it a little bit until maybe hoping that something would happen. But this is a guy that, still very valuable from a defensive center position. And, just 5 assists on the season in LA. Offensively, his game clearly has gone down. It kind of diminished, or started to diminish, I should say, at the end of last season. Resurgence in the playoffs, did well offensively, did well defensively, but that's really where the value here lies. So for a lot of teams that kicked the tires on Phil Danault, it was his ability to shut down the opposition, especially come playoff time. The Canadiens certainly needed some help at the dot. They needed some help winning faceoffs, and they certainly wanted some help on the defensive side of things. And they achieved that by getting Danault. It was a second-round pick that they didn't even really – they came with Patrick Laine. It was like a free pick effectively out of it. So the Habs certainly win in this one. But, LA, I think they're going to pivot. They've been looking for offense. We touched on this already. This is a team that wants offense, Irf, and they need some extra scoring. They're looking for a speedy guy who can put the puck in the net. And now they've got an extra second-round pick to play with, along with a lot of cap space.
Yeah, the LA Kings are an interesting team because it seems like they're just one big splash away from, pushing themselves over the edge of being really, really competitive in the Western or the Pacific Division and the Western Conference. The Carolina Hurricanes are an interesting team because you and I have touched on this on multiple episodes, and I know you've been across the network also talking about the Carolina Hurricanes wanting to go big game hunting, big name hunting. With Seth Jarvis now out, we don't know the exact timeline yet of the injury. How much more does that speed up the process here for the Carolina Hurricanes?
I'm sure it's going to make them be a little bit more aggressive than they typically are. They were one of the teams, by the way, in on Phil Danault. They had an offer on the table for Phil Danault, and it included, I don't know the full parameters of the overall offer, but it included Jesperi Kotkaniemi. Okay. And LA decided they just weren't a fan of the term. He's got 4 years left after this season. It's a manageable cap hit, but it's just the term, and not having a full understanding as to the type of player he could be with the Kings. They decided to pass on that and go for the draft pick instead. But Kotkaniemi's name has been out there for the last little bit, and I think this goes back to last season as well. I'm curious to see how they maneuver this now. With respect to what you mentioned, Seth Jarvis, depending on the magnitude of that injury and how long he may be out for, I don't know necessarily. I don't think it's going to divert their plans, and Eric Tulsi's going to remain kind of zeroed in on what he'd like to do. But this is a team that kicked the tires on Quinn Hughes. This is a team that wasn't afraid to take a big swing for Rantanen, not afraid to take a big swing on Gensel the season prior to that. They take their swings.
Yeah. Well, and I think that for them, you got to get over the hump now, right? You can only make it to the second, third Eastern Conference final at some point. You got to get back to the Cup final. And their window obviously is very open with the additions that they've already made this offseason. On the Washington Capitals, as we do this, we look at them and say, are they going to be a team that wants to add? And how aggressive are they going to be a team if they do want to add?
They definitely want to add. This is going to be another team. So we're starting to see a lot of these teams that are either right there at the top of the list in the NHL or feel they're going to be. These are the teams that it doesn't sound like any of them are afraid to take a big swing. I throw Colorado in that mix. We know Minnesota took their swing. They're not done.
They're not done. Yeah, exactly.
No, at all. Dallas is not afraid to, and they've got the cap situation, which they're maneuvering with Seguin. They didn't shut him down for the full season yet. They're going to reevaluate him after Olympics. And then you've got Carolina that we've talked about. We know New Jersey is hunting. And the Washington Capitals, another team that tried to get into the Quinn Hughes race. And, look, I don't blame them for not wanting to trade Ryan Leonard. But there are other pieces there that I think they're looking to move, or excuse me, I should say willing to move if the right pieces come into play. And this is a team that just they don't want to just prolong the Ovechkin situation, whether this is Ovi's last year or it's going to be next year or the year after, whatever it is. This is a team that wants to go after that star piece that can be part of this roster for a lengthy period of time here. So they're another team that I'm looking at that are going, all right, let's see who's available, who could potentially be available. Can we pry somebody out of another team? Patrick, McClellan, all those guys in DC are looking right now and are still going to look. And this is a team that I'm going to look at as the season moves along, whether it's ahead of the Olympic break, whether it's ahead of the trade deadline. I think they're going to be active, whether they can do it or not. Obviously, it takes two to tango. As Rasmus Anderson said over the weekend.
Just about to say that.
But, they're a team that's not necessarily itching, but they're looking to see if there's something that they can scratch.
You mentioned Rasmus Anderson. I don't want to touch on the Calgary Flames, but I do want to bring the conversation kind of north of the border a little bit here with respect to two teams, both in Ontario. We'll start with the Ottawa Senators and the aggressiveness of Steve Staios, if there is going to be one. I know we talked about it really before the season even started, that they were looking for scoring. Is that still the case? And where do you think we sit at with the Ottawa Senators?
Yeah, they're still looking. They took a little bit of a break, I guess, or at least things calmed down.
Well, they were the only Canadian team in a playoff position at one point.
Yeah, they were. And that's why I think Steve Staios has been looking, as you said, we touched on it right at the start of the year. But then, they got hot and he just said, okay, well, maybe we don't want to mess with this just now. At least that's the notion that kind of was spread across the league. And then in the last couple of weeks, he started up again. And obviously we're in the holiday freeze. It doesn't stop guys from talking and whatnot. But this is another team that would like to add and wants to add kind of a second line type player. If it's mid-six and it's a guy who's interchangeable, sure. But second line caliber player is kind of what the Ottawa Senators are looking for. And, they're a team that's kicked the tires before. Kiefer Sherwood in Vancouver, Braden Shen in St. Louis. These are a couple of the players that they've been kind of eyeing and looking at.
Yeah, they had interest in Brock Besser, obviously, before he signed in Vancouver as well, did the Ottawa Senators, and that was, before July 1st. So they've always wanted to address scoring and depth scoring as well on that team. All right, let's get to the Toronto Maple Leafs. You're laughing a little bit, and I look, people around the National Hockey League are looking at that team and being like, how are they in the position they are in with who they have in that top level of talent? It's been kind of a rough go for Austin Matthews. William Nylander isn't there. Johnny Tavares is, being John Tavares, but the results are just not there. Guys coming in and out of the lineup, head coach calling out players kind of subtly calling out head coach as well a little bit. The shots of Brad Treliving looking very frustrated in the GM's box during the games. What is going on in Toronto, and how quickly can they fix it?
I don't honestly. I don't think it's a quick fix.
Yeah.
This is going to take some hard work, and by that I mean you've got to look at the key pieces on this roster. Look, Brad Treliving does not want to fire Craig Berube. That's been abundantly clear to me. Made clear to me that the coaching decision or a coaching change is not what the Leafs want to do, because they don't feel it's primarily the coach's fault. And everybody was crying about wanting a different voice with Sheldon Keefe, and it's time to make a change. And they make that change, and they bring in Craig Berube, and now everybody's crying again that, oh, we've got to make a change behind the bench. Eventually, you got to look at what you have on the roster. And yes, they've made some changes, but there are some. The core is the issue with the Toronto Maple Leafs, and look,
the core was the issue before, and they traded, and Mitch Marner was moved.
Right. So, what does that tell you? It tells you that some of the key guys on this team aren't doing what they're supposed to do. William Nylander hasn't scored in 11 games. I think he's got 5 points in his last 10 or 11 or 12 games, whatever it is. He was top 5 in scoring for the first, 2 months of the season. And then all of a sudden, you just completely shift into a totally different type of player. Because why? You're losing a little bit more, so you're sulking. That's an issue for the Leafs. I still give Austin Matthews a little bit of the benefit of the doubt here, because I believe he's not 100%. I believe there's something else, not why he went to Germany last year to get checked out. I think this is a different thing that is affecting his shot. He still has one of the best releases in the league when he's healthy. I don't see him being healthy right now, clearly healthy enough to play. And I wonder if the Olympics are factoring in here. But there's something else that's kind of ailing Austin Matthews that's affecting his ability to shoot the puck like he has in the past. So I get it. But even that, like you're still not seeing enough out of him. You're not seeing enough out of Willie Nylander. You're not nearly seeing enough out of Morgan Riley. There was some talk at the end of last season that the Leafs might explore something with respect to Riley. And I think there was a conversation, or part of the conversation, that the Leafs had with him about getting back on track, because they hyped it up like crazy in preseason. He spent a lot of time in Toronto over the summer. He had a new regimen. He was back on track. He was going to be the player he was, and he hasn't been. I think he had the first couple of weeks were great, and then it's just kind of, OEL is their best defenseman, hands down this season. And I love the guy, but Morgan Riley's supposed to be the guy. He's supposed to be that guy. So I wouldn't be shocked if we start to hear his name popping up again, but he has a full no move, and he made it clear to them in the summer, or leading into the summer, that he didn't want to waive his no movement clause. I don't know if that's changed. I don't, but I wouldn't be surprised if they broach that subject if they haven't done so already, because something of that magnitude needs to happen for this team. You can't keep blaming the coaching staff, although the power play is garbage. You have to focus, and I get it as well. Berube's in a tough spot because you kind of just have to, like, these are the cards you're dealt. So you have to adjust your system based on what you get. They'd love to be more offensive and run and gun. They just don't have the full tools to do it. You've got 4 top 6 forwards, roster construction, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. There's so many different layers to this problem in Toronto that it's not one thing that should be able to fix it.
No, but the talk that you always have when things go sideways is you can't really fire players. You can try and trade them, but with no move clauses and guys being like, I'm not signing an extension with the current team, a lot of that comes into play. So we'll obviously have to watch. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to also preface it by, if they keep losing, then Tree's not going to have much of a choice. He'll have to go down there. Yeah, exactly. So to your point, that's the easy solution. It's not what they want to do. It may be what they have to do because they may have no other choice. But I know it's definitively not what they want to do. They want to look at fixing the roster in other areas, but it keeps going. They may not have a choice.
Do we know what's going on with Chris Tanev? Has there been an update? I know he skated a little bit, took a couple morning skates, but that was pretty much it.
Yeah, he's on the trip. They keep saying that they still don't have a full directive as to where they're going. They're flying back to Toronto today. It's a joint decision between him, the doctors, and whatnot, whether or not he's going to have surgery to fix whatever it is specific that he's dealing with. The Leafs are very vague with respect to injuries, and that's a nice way to put it. And we still don't have a definitive idea, other than the fact that it's not a concussion for Stolarz. We don't know what's going on with Tanev. We don't know what specifically is going on with Stolarz.
Yeah.
And even Matthews, even though he's good enough to play, but not, still something's bothering him. So with Tanev, it's wait and see mode still.
Yeah, I think the indication around Tanev was that he feels great, but they're just kind of waiting and seeing what happens here. Obviously, it's going to be a joint decision, like you just mentioned.
Yeah.
All right, Dave. We're going to spread some holiday cheer, because I usually ask you when we kind of wrap these things up, what do you want to get off your chest? So instead, let's go the holiday version and say, what is on your Christmas wish list for either the league or a team in specific here in the National Hockey League?
Well, my wish list at the top of it
is that you can speak.
Speaking properly, that'd be nice. I'd like to know where the draft is. They're still figuring that out. That'd be nice. There was talk of Montreal. There was talk of Denver. There's a few others that the league still hasn't figured it out, other than changing some of the stuff, which I think it was Elliot that mentioned it over the weekend. Let's see. I would like to start seeing some big, bold moves happening once we get to January. Maybe not right after the freeze, but January. And I'm looking at St. Louis. I'm looking at, and this is not all connected, it's just individually, St. Louis, Seattle, who started things by moving Marchment, and Anaheim. I think these are three teams that are looking to make some moves. Obviously, we got a couple sellers with Seattle and St. Louis, and we've got a buyer in Anaheim. And I think we touched on this as well earlier on in the season. They're another team that's been looking to make a bit of a splash. And I would like to see that happen, because I think what they're looking for is pretty big in terms of adding up front. And I think Ryan Strom's name's been out there a little bit, just primarily because from a usage perspective. But they want to bring in a scoring winger that they can add to this group. So whether they circle back to St. Louis and ask about Kyrou, or if they go in a different direction, that's at the top of the list for me. And also maybe Calgary accepting their fate, even though they've been on a heater the last little bit. I don't think it's going to happen. But what about you? Give me your list. Give me like 2 things or 3 things on your list. I'm flipping it.
Oh, I think this might piss off some people. My one is, I'm done with the did you know Quinn Hughes plays for the Minnesota Wild posts. It's been a few games. He's played in different jerseys. We all understand the trade was big, but they also have other players. One is the highest paid player in the league.
Right.
So I'm done with that. And honestly, I agree with you a little bit. Teams accepting their fate. I think that to me is an interesting one, because in the East, you look at it and you say, okay, there's only a few points separating where you are in the standings and where you can be. So everyone right now thinks that they're in it. We had Don Waddell on, about a month ago, and he said, it's just so tight. So everyone thinks that they can make it, or they can, you get in and who knows what happens. The Western Conference, it's a little, and he did. And then the Western Conference, it's a little bit different.
Yeah.
I think teams like Calgary, teams like Vancouver, even though they're on an absolute heater right now, accept your fate. You said you're open for business. Guys are tiptoeing around thinking that they are going to get traded, maybe a little bit upset that they haven't been moved yet. So, those are the 2 for me, for sure. But we're celebrating holiday cheer here and both being the Grinch. Anyways, that's probably it for me. All right, let's get to our Bet365 line of the week. Let's go to December 27th. I'm taking 2 games. Battle of Alberta in the Edmonton Oilers and Calgary Flames. We just talked about the Calgary Flames accepting their fate. They're going to accept their fate in that game, and Connor McDavid is going to run wild on that team because he is very good at hockey. So I'm taking the Edmonton Oilers -1.5. And the Battle of Ontario, the Ottawa Senators and the Toronto Maple Leafs. I think this holiday break is going to bode well for the Toronto Maple Leafs. I think they're going to come in and out of this break guns a-blazing. I'm taking the Leafs in that game against the Ottawa Senators. So put those two together, decent-ish odds. Whatever you bet, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Download the app, get in on the game, use code NATION, Bet365, must be 19 or older. Please play responsibly. David, happy holidays, Merry Christmas, enjoy the break, and we will keep doing this next week.
Let's do it. Merry Christmas.
Hey, hockey fans, if you enjoyed that video, then make sure you hit the subscribe button right here on the Daily Faceoff YouTube. We have you covered for everything you need. Exclusive interviews on The Sheet with Jeff Merrick, all the latest hockey news on Daily Faceoff Live, and you can always get your morning started with Johnny Lazarus and Colby Cohn on Morning Cup of Hockey. Don't miss a minute. Hit that subscribe button.